Thanks again for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about this new multiple submission tool that I'm so excited about. I think it could really change a lot of the ways that folks are running their current grants or the way that people think about their future grants. So I'm Jessica Gronick. I'm the GoSmart Program Manager, and usually your first line of defense when you have questions about GoSmart. And again, I just really appreciate you being here today. So what we're going to talk about is what the tool is, why you would use it, where and when you'll see it, how you'll use it, how the applicant's read and write view appears, how the read-only preview form appears, how multiple submission data will display in reports, and then finally we'll chat about the current free trial and the eventual fees for this tool. So what is the multiple submission tool? It's a new setting on the custom narrative page. It allows for a single set of questions to be submitted as many times are allowed, required, or appropriate for your applicants. And lastly, it can display or hide some of those questions. So I know that's a big ask that we've gotten frequently. So why would you use it? Well, first off, it'll alleviate the building of dozens or even potentially hundreds of superfluous fields. We have a lot of clients who need to ask about venue locations or program locations, other use cases we'll talk about in a moment, and they usually have to build for the highest common denominator. So if somebody's got, if it's the potential that an applicant has 20 things to report, but another one might have 2 or 3, you sometimes have to shoot for that higher number, and now you have to build 20 sets of those questions to potentially capture everything for again, that highest common denominator. So this just alleviates all of that. You build that set once, and then you tell the system how many times people should be able to respond. So that also is wonderful for applicants because then they also only see the sets that they need rather than having to direct them to say, hey, you're going to see 400 fields below. If you only need to use 20, fill out your 20 and then move on. It's going to alleviate all of that. Similarly, it's going to alleviate panelists from seeing all of those unused sets. So right now, where sometimes you have to direct a panelist to say, hey, you might see, 5, 10, 15 sets that are unanswered. That's just because, people only responded how many times as were appropriate for them. Now they will only see the sets that have been responded to per applicant, and they don't have to sift through a ton of potentially unanswered fields as well. You'll also be able to report and analyze and sort those responses in a really slick way. So a lot of our clients need something like this, perhaps in their final reports, where they're accepting maybe subgrantee or subcontractor contact information so that they could then reach out to those folks and get even additional information. So this just alleviates perhaps having to use something external like an Excel spreadsheet that you're asking your applicants to upload. And then you as the agency has to download and parse each of those Excel spreadsheets and sort of put those together. This way, everything is in one database, and you can pull a report of all of those responses across applicants and have, your contact list, your budget sheet, whatever it is that you're asking for. And then we've already talked about a couple here, but some specific use cases. Again, it's going to be a great alternative to a narrative table. So if you've come to us with a grant that used to exist outside of the system, maybe you used to run it in Excel, where it's a little bit easier to have said, tell us about your venues, give us the venue address, the venue manager, their contact information. You probably recognized you couldn't do that in GoSmart because our tables only allow for numericals. And so we ended up sort of converting it into narrative fields. But again, then we were met with having to build it so many times to meet that highest common denominator. So this will just really be a perfect alternative to those narrative tables if you want to go back to that, or if you had been thinking about using something like that but weren't able to before. We talked about that it might be great for subgrantees or subcontact information, venue or program location details. We already have that location information template that goes to the National Endowment of the Arts, but we've gotten a lot of feedback that it's a little bit limiting. It's exactly what the NEA asked for, but perhaps you want some location information as well as a couple other fields of data. And so this way you'll be able to build your own custom location form. It might be a perfect alternative to the way you're currently asking for media. If you ask for, let's say, 5 pieces of artwork, and along with each of those art pieces, you want to know a handful of things. Some of those things might be, collaborators, price, dimensions, things like that, that are already available in the media library. But if you use that system right now, you'll know that it feels a little disjointed. People upload to the library, they answer some of those fields. You can't change those fields, you can't make them required. You usually have to sort of direct them on a separate page to say, make sure to answer these fields because it's really valuable. So this way you can build your own upload form right in the same place. Ask for those couple narrative pieces that are, required perhaps by you or really valuable, and then let that be answered 5 times if you need up to 5 samples. So really could work powerfully. Now in that example, the media sample that you'd be asking for would be using an upload file button and not the media library, which is a little bit more powerful. So we just have to sort of talk through, is it worth that trade-off to be able to say, maybe the JPEG would be a little smaller, but you'd have all these other tools at your expense. So just some things to think about. Again, maybe something like a board list if you need to capture board contact information, but it could be 2 people for one organization, but maybe 20 board members at another. This would really help there. Something like a proof of purchase. One of our clients allows for up to 50 proofs of purchase at the final report stage. And it includes uploads, it includes dates. And we had to build out 50 fields to 50 sets of those fields to meet their needs before. And this way we're going to go back just to 1, and then folks will be able to answer it as many times as is appropriate for them. And then finally, as I mentioned before, the biggest or most unusual unsuspecting use case is that we're going to be able to hide pages from panelists using this tool. So if you build a demographic page or some other kind of question page where you're asking questions that you need as the grant funder, but maybe you don't want your panelists to see, you can now build that as a multiple submission page, set the number to 1, and uncheck the show all responses on PDF. And then that way it's hidden from the panelist reviewers, but you can still have that data in your database. So it can just be really powerful in so many ways. So let's talk about where and when you'll see it. We've kind of nodded to that already. Again, from the grant editor, cycle pages. I'm going to bump back out one more. If you're looking at all of your pages or you're adding a new custom narrative, it's just going to be on any of your custom narratives in the application, the interim report, and the final report. So you can use this tool in any 3 of those forms. Once you get into that custom narrative, you'll see your info instruction text just like always. And this new setting is going to be just beneath that. So right off the bat, you're going to see custom narrative settings, allow applicants to submit multiple responses. By default, it's going to be no. And all of them in all of your custom narrative pages in existing grants, in cloned grants, and in new grants are always going to be set to no by default. So if this tool isn't right for you or isn't right for a certain page, you're going to move on just like you always have. You're going to build your pages just like always, not think another second about it, leave it set to no, and the custom narrative is going to behave exactly as you always have known it to behave. But if you want to use this tool, now you're going to set it to yes, and then you're going to see this new field pop up, number of submissions per applicant. So let's talk a little bit about how you're going to use this space. Once you see this new field pop up, you're going to have 4 options to set your parameters. And they're pretty self-explanatory, but let's just peek at them. The first one is range. And like you'd imagine, it's going to give you the opportunity to set a minimum and a maximum. So this might be great, again, for something like a board list or a venue list where your applicant has to have at least 1 or 2 or 5, whatever the minimum is. You can set that low end so that everybody has to respond at least X amount of times. But then you can set a maximum as well. If you know that, listen, you might have 30 board members, but we really only want to hear about the 15 most active, then maybe you might set a range like that. If you want to just set a minimum, just like you'd imagine, it's just going to require that they respond to this set at least this minimum amount of times, and then they could respond as many times beyond that as the system will allow. And by default, the system will allow up to 50, but that's a number that you can change with the GoSmart team. So if you feel like you're asking for something that's going to require just a lot more space than that, just reach out to us and we can bump that number up for you. Alternatively, you could set a maximum, and again, just like you'd imagine, it's just going to set that high-end range, but it does mean that applicants will be able to submit their application without responding to this set even once. So if you're asking the questions with the assumption that everybody has to answer at least once, then a minimum or a range might be right for you. Or last, there's exactly. And again, just like it sounds, it just means that that's how many times the applicants all have to respond. So the real benefit there is if you know that everybody has to respond 5 times, that's great. But what you've done is you've saved yourself the time of building this set 4 additional times. So even if you know everybody should submit this 5 times, you're still only going to build the set once, and then the system just lets them keep responding until they hit that 5th number. And it also will keep them from submitting until they've hit that 5th number as well. So really, really great tool there. And again, this might be the tool that you use if you want to hide your responses from the PDF. So if we set exactly to 1 and we uncheck show all responses on the PDF, the page will look just like it regularly does to the applicant, in that they'll answer each question once, but then just like you've told the system, you're going to hide it from the PDF. So your panelists won't see it. Now, it also means that your applicants and you as the admin are not going to see those responses when you first go to look at that preview form, and we'll peek at that in a second. But you can always start with this box checked so that during your review session, those 2 audiences can see this. And then when you're ready to go to panel, you can come back and uncheck this and then have us clear your cache so that your panelists see those preview forms without this extra data that you don't want them to see. So once you've determined your settings up here, you're going to go on and use the page just like you always do. You're going to use the question adding tool. You'll see that all of the question types are available, save for one. If you use this tool, you will not be able to add to this page a category sort select question. So just a reminder that category sort select question is that tool that to your applicants, it looks like a drop-down optional question, but the response shows up on your dashboard. So that's really powerful as well. If you're asking for something like artistic discipline or zip code or budget range, something that usually helps you determine how somebody might get paneled or how they might get awarded, that's a really powerful field. But unfortunately, because of the dynamism of it, you can't use it on this type of page. Because it's limited how many times it can show up on that grant manager dashboard. So if you have a question that you still want to use that category sort select, you would just want to make sure that you're using it on a page that isn't using this multiple submission tool. But as soon as you click yes here, that question type is removed from the drop-down box. Alternatively, if you're, let's say, cloning a cycle that you think you might want to use this tool for, if it has a category sort select on it already, you'll note that when you come here, the yes is going to be grayed out, and then you'll see this note that it's not available if you have a category sort select. So at that point, you'd want to make the choice, do you want to convert that page into a multiple response page and maybe just remove and set that category sort select question somewhere else, or do you want to create a different type of page for your multiple responses? All right. So let's look at what applicants will see. On the back end, we're looking at this board member contact list. So we've got a bunch of different question types. We're asking for the board name, their member address, did they serve on the board? What do they currently serve if they do? What is their position? When did they join? An upload file field for a bio, and then a large text field to learn more. So from the applicant standpoint, you'll notice that everything looks very much the same to them. They'll come to their current programs and applications. They'll look for their opportunities just like always. They'll either click start or edit if they're in the middle. And when they get into that application, they're going to see that table of contents just like always. You're going to name your pages just like always. And then they're going to see if you've included that info instruction text, they're going to see that right at the beginning, just like always. Now, the only change for them initially is this new little narrative set here. So based on your settings on the back end, the system pulls it together and turns it into this little short paragraph. So remember, for this page, we selected a range. So it's going to say right off the bat, this page accepts multiple answer sets. You've provided 3. Now that's because I've already been here as a tester, but if it's my first time, it's going to say you've provided 0. And then depending on our settings, it's going to give a little directive. You must provide at least 2. You can't exceed 15. And then it's going to give just a little directive on how to use the page, which is basically just to say, answer these questions, save the page at the bottom, and then you'll be able to add a new answer set. And then furthermore, you can click on any of these existing answer sets to review or edit, and then you could even delete if you need to. So let's just take a look and see how it feels to fill this out as an applicant. So as I said, we've already got 3 in here because we've come in as a tester, but let's say it's even my first time, or let's say I'm coming back and I do want to add a 4th. I'm going to see that these fields are available for response. So I'm going to fill them in. I'm going to skip the upload for now, just because it takes an extra second, but assume that we absolutely could upload just as we always would. And then I'm going to click Save Work. We'll see that the page regenerates just like it always has in the past, but now I've got this new answer set that wasn't there. And then again, my fields are totally blank, so I can keep filling this in up to 15 times. If I want to go back and look at any of these, let's say I thought, oh, you know what, I think for my answer set 2, I was talking about this board member, but I just remembered that they actually never served as a treasurer. So you can come back in, make your change, save, and it's going to save that set number 2 with your new modifications. Same, let's say I've realized that actually my third board member doesn't serve anymore or just had to drop off. I'm actually going to get rid of this one. Great. Now I've only got 3 sets, and my number 4 set has now moved into the number 3 spot. So it does sort of just keep giving you the actual numbers that are being used. So your applicant would have to sort of pay attention to that. Now, if they get to this point and they feel like I really need to see again who I've put in before I know if I can go forward, great. The next thing they're going to do is take a peek at that preview form. So once they click that preview form or view PDF, as long as you've checked off that box to include it on your PDF in those responses, they're going to be able to see those responses cleanly on that HTML PDF preview form that we all use to see the responses. So we've opened the PDF. Like always, it starts with our applicant profile information. And then our very next page is that board list page where they could put in 2 to 15 responses. And we're going to see these really clean delineated response sets. So the system pulls it in such that it gives the each response set the name of the page. So again, we called it board list on the back. It could be whatever you call it. Then throws in the word response and then the number that coordinates. So we've included 3 responses to this question. And so we can see that we can see only those 3 responses and not 15 sets where 12 are unanswered that we have to scroll through. So it makes it really clean and easy to see exactly what those responses are. And just like always, I'm sorry that in none of these examples did I upload a file, but if I had, it's going to work just like the upload file field does on any other page as well. So your app or your panelists and your reviewers and your applicants will be able to click on that file if there was one uploaded right here as well. And similarly, if they upload an item to any of these sets, those files are also going to be part of the panelist support material portal as well. So they're always going to be able to see really cleanly what's been included there, just like they would on any other page. All right, and then if you do opt to not show it on the PDF, if this is unchecked, when the reviewers of any of your end users, the applicants, the panelists, or yourself open this PDF, not only will this data not show up, but neither will the header. So there won't be any knowledge that there was that page in existence. So if you do create something you want to hide, like a demographic page, your panelists are not going to see, oh, there was a demographic page here, but I'm not seeing those responses. They just won't even see that that page existed, and the system will go right on to the next page. All right. So there's 2 great ways that you can see this data even outside of this review form, and that's through 2 different reports. So like always, you can view this in the custom report, but we'll take a peek at that in a second. Or you can use our brand new report that goes along with these pages called the multiple submission report. So from your reports tab, you'd click on multiple submission report. Like always, you're going to select your program and cycle, and then you're going to see the pages that use this tool in that cycle as an option to pull into this report. Now, I have built out this multiple submission demo to include a ton of different page types that use cases. It'd be unusual for your cycles probably to include this many multiple pages, but if they do, great. But by and large, you probably will have 1 or 2. Whatever it is that you've used though, great. You can include 1 or all of them in a single report, and I'll show you what it looks like if you include more than 1. But let's say we want to pull that board list information because we want to make a contact sheet for them. So you're going to grab that board list page. You're going to grab your statuses just like you always do. We're going to build that report. And then that report comes out really cleanly where every set gets its own row. So right now I've only got 1 test applicant in there, and that's applicant number 2, but we're seeing all 3 of their sets. If I had many applicants in here and the first one entered 3, the second one entered 2, the third one entered 4, we'd see a row for each of those. And the only difference, the only way we could tell the difference who submitted that set is by the app number. So we would then, in the second 2 rows, we'd see number 3. In the next 4 rows, we might see number 4. And then we're always going to see what number submission are we looking at, And then we're going to see just the responses to those questions, just like you would in a custom report. But the real powerful thing here is that, again, if you're asking for this information that can just be so broad, or rather not broad, but that can just be so comprehensive and there can be so much of it, being able to pull it in this table really allows you to sort and analyze. So if you wanted just all of your email addresses for all of the board members and you made sure you asked that question, which I didn't hear, you'd be able to just really easily pull a list of every email for every board member for every applicant. Or maybe you want to see, how many of your board members serve as president at one time. Again, you can really use the power of Excel or Sheets or whatever spreadsheet software you use to manipulate this data in a way that was so challenging before if you asked for your applicants to sort of upload these maybe as an Excel spreadsheet separately, because then you'd have to parse all those together. So it can just be really valuable. Let me show you really quickly. It's unusual, and I'm not sure how many people might use this, but if you included more than one multiple page submission page per report, let me show you what that's going to look like. Great. So in this case, you'll see that we sort of see that same data. And again, I've only got that single applicant who's gone through and added stuff. But if we had, multiple applicants who responded to board list, we'd see many more below this row. And then you'll see this break. And then we've got our second page worth of data. And again, if we had more applicants who had responded to this page, then we'd have additional rows. So you can pull them in the same spreadsheet, but you'll note that your column headers change with each page, as they should, because this page has a totally different set of questions than this page. So not sure how valuable it will be that you can pull all of those into the same spreadsheet. But again, it just depends, maybe if you want to pull all of this stuff and then sort by app number so you can see everybody's multiple responses to things in sort of one packet, maybe that'd be valuable for you. But then there's even another way you can pull this data in. So let's go back to our custom report builder. And just like you always would, let's say we're going to pull the org name and maybe our applicant's contact information. We want to include their number and their status. And then again, we just want to see that board information. But maybe we've also got another page of regular questions that we ask, their contact information or their program information. You could always include that type of page as well. And then, a page that has your multiple submissions. You're going to grab your folks and your statuses like always. And then this, just like your custom reports always do, it's going to include all of those data points that we checked off on the page before. But now you'll see when we get to the questions from a multiple submission page, those responses are all in a single cell. Now they're delineated really nicely by the word submission number X, but you'll note that you of course probably can't sort very well by this data. So not too helpful if you're trying to say, listen, I need to know, again, like email addresses per applicant or per applicant per set. But if you just want to get a bird's eye view, how many board members does Steep Canyon Rangers have? Well, I can see right here, they've got 3. That's really helpful for me to see at a glance. I'm not going to do much with this data, but I can see they've got 3 and I can see they've given me all the information. That's great. And then you'll move on. And again, these 3 applicants haven't responded to this, this page because they were testers from another time, but we'd see something very similar for each of them. If this person had entered 4, we'd see 4 submissions in each of these cells and so on. So 2 really great ways to pull that data. Just depends how you want to see it. Is it more at a glance so that you can get a sense of what is going on with that applicant? Or is it better to pull that multiple submission report so that you can really get in there and manipulate the data and use it the way you need to? All right, so let's take a couple of seconds and go into some of these use cases. So I've pulled in some of our clients' existing applications that might be ripe for moving over to this type of system. So I'm just going to show you a handful of things that are going on right now so that you can maybe see, oh yeah, that's something that we do. And I think that now I can get a better sense of how this tool might come into play. So one of our clients at the final report level asks for program locations. The way we built out this page to begin with is we knew that they might have as many as 5 locations for their programmatic work. So we built out this location number 1 set with these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fields. And then we added a save work button. And then we built another one, location number 2, same thing, added a save work button, built location number 3 questions, and so on. And so this would alleviate this new tool would alleviate having to build those three sets in case applicants don't necessarily need all three. What we're going to do instead, we're going to delete location 2 and 3. We're going to convert this page into a multiple submission, so you don't even need to build anything else because we've already got this existing initial set. We're going to change the settings on this page from a range of 1 to 3. And now applicants are going to come to this page, only see this single set, fill it out, and then be able to save their work and fill it out again if it's valuable for them. If it's not, they're going to move on. Another example might be a venue location or a media request. So in this example, our client asks for some tour summary that's really based around venue information. So this is for a touring artist who might travel to as many as 6 grant-funded performances. And so it's really hefty language that they're asking for, really hefty data points. And so we built out this really great page with a ton of information that they're gathering. And then we had to build it out 5 more times. And so again, in the future, we would just remove these 5 additional pages. We would set this page with a range from 1 to 6, and applicants would be able to just fill this out one time if that's all that's valuable for them, or continue to fill it out over and over again. Similarly, these folks ask for up to 3 work samples. Now, this isn't too arduous. It's perfectly fine the way that it is. But if we wanted to, we could even alleviate from here down and again, turn this page into a range of 1 to 3. And then that way you're allowing them to tell you about 1 to 3 samples without having to sort of see all 6 of these fields or potentially skip the second 2 or second 4 and then move on. So even though, again, a page like this is so simple, the idea is really that what you don't want at the end of the day is potentially empty fields for you or your applicants or your panelists to have to sort of bypass. So anytime there's a good opportunity to say, these are exact replicas of these questions, they're just giving the opportunity to answer again, this is the right tool for that page. We already saw an example of that board list. Let me show you again a final example of a proof of purchase. Now for this client, they allow up to 50 examples of proofs of purchase at the final report level. And each of those proof of purchase sets asked 8 questions, 2 of which were uploads, 2 were radio questions, and then 4 were narratives. We had to spend quite a bit of time building out 50 sets of all 8 of those questions across 5 separate pages, just so that the page itself wasn't literally hundreds of questions. And now we're going to be able to remove all but one of those sets and turn it into a page that's going to use a range from 1 to 50. So just going to be so powerful for those folks, and so great for their applicants to not try to figure out, man, where can I stop skipping these fields that aren't valuable for me? All right, so let's take a peek at that proof of purchase situation again. So again, we built 5 pages for proofs of payments. I'm sorry, payments, not purchases. And then built out these really robust questions. What date were you invoiced? What date was it paid? Show us that invoice and that proof of payment in the form of a receipt. And then went on to build it again and again and again. And so now if you're this applicant or the panelist, well, at the final report level, your panelist isn't looking at it, but at the admin level, you're looking at this and you're having to sift through pages and pages and pages of potentially blank payment information fields. And now if we remove all of these and change it to a multiple submission page, you're going to see this set only as many times as the applicant responds and not anything more. And again, for this type of need, the reporting at the end is what's going to be so valuable for this client, because they're going to be able to pull all of that into a spreadsheet, do a really quick glance at the spreadsheet and say, yeah, all of our payments are accounted for, and we've got the proof of it right here in the form of a link that's going to open these fields or these files. So just a really easy way to be able to get into this data in a way that was a little bit arduous before. Now, this client also, sort of similarly to the first venue thing that we looked at, they'd be able to turn this project, grant project details page into a multiple submission page as well, where we're just building that first set and then allowing applicants to complete it as many as 5 times. So just a ton of great opportunities to be able to convert some of your existing potential pages into using this multiple submission tool. And then lastly, like we talked about, you could just hide those pages from panelists. So let's say that we do decide that we want to hide that board information from our panelists. We want to gather it because we want to be able to email all of those board members, but we don't want to show it to the applicant. So you could come here, opt not to show it on the PDF. And then when your panelist goes to review that PDF, they're going to see, just like they always do, the applicant profile, and then it's going to skip that page and go right into the second page. All right, so let's chat a little bit about the fee for this. Right now, the fee is going to be $150 per cycle that actively uses the tool to accept applications or final reports or interim reports, but it is per cycle. So you may use a handful of these pages throughout your cycle. It's still going to be just the single $150 fee. But if you try this in the next couple of weeks or months and you give it a go, you get in there as a tester, you use it, and for whatever reason you realize, you know what, this actually isn't quite the right fix for what I'm needing, so you turn it off, we of course won't charge you for that. So I'd really recommend that if you're interested at all, if you think it might meet your needs at all, to get in there and give it a try, and then see how it feels when you're testing, or for sure reach out to the GoSmart team and we can go over it together. Now, in the future, when you turn on the tool by coming to that custom narrative page and clicking yes, right away when you click yes, you're going to see a modal that's going to remind you that this feature has a charge for it. And it's also going to immediately, as long as you affirm that you read the modal, it's going to send you an email with some pricing information and some more information and resources about how to use the tool. So don't ever be afraid to turn it on, because even though you're going to see that modal, you're going to agree that you read, that you understood that there's a fee, you're still going to have quite a bit of leeway to turn it off before you get charged. And again, you can always reach out to us and say, you know, we misunderstood, or we thought we were going to use it and we didn't. So never fear that you're going to get charged erroneously for it. I'd much rather you give it a try than sort of be afraid to try it. For now, though, your first cycle is free if you initiate your cycle before June 30th. And that, again, is just because we really want you to get in and see if your cycles can use this tool. And on top of that, if you want to ask for our help in rebuilding or building a new cycle, we're discounting our hourly fee from what's typically $100 an hour for that build time will be $75 an hour when it's for the purpose of implementing this tool. So for sure, again, get in there, give it a go, or if you feel like, man, we have a lot of changes to make and we actually want to turn this around pretty quick, then for sure reach out to us and we can help you out with that too. All right, so that is the tool. That's the cost. I hope everybody feels like they've understood a little bit more. Let me open this up to FAQ, and I'm also going to just peek at our chat and see what those questions are first, and then let me have anybody who needs to after that maybe unmute and ask some questions. So we've got from Laura, I'm thinking that we could use these multiple sets to ask questions that could help us eliminate applicants who do not meet our applicant criteria. Love to talk about this further. For sure, it absolutely just depends on those questions, Laura. If you feel like, you know, the question is going to be, you know, tell us about your, you know, last 5 experiences in getting your art into a gallery or something like that, then for sure it's valuable to say, let's ask those questions, build them once, and let somebody tell us about as many as 5 times they you know, tried to get their work into a gallery or something like that. For sure could be helpful. But like you said, let's maybe chat offline about that kind of specific. Yeah. And then, oh, sorry, is that okay?
No, that's good, because again, I think there's 2 pieces here that might relate to that. I mean, one of them is just the multiple things, but the other one also, which I don't understand whether or not it's actually connected to the new system, is asking questions that are specifically can't be seen by the panel, because even with they may not be serial questions, but there are questions that would help us eliminate people who are not applicable, but we don't want the panel to see that. It'll just help, you know, our first review.
Absolutely. Yep. And in that case, I would say for sure. So if you're thinking, I'm just trying to think about, you know, questions that
for example, Are you still in study, in an undergraduate degree program?
Yes,
Despite
absolutely.
the fact we say you can't apply if you are, people do all the time.
That's right.
And we
That's
say,
right.
okay, let's ask this question. Are you, yes or no? If you
Yep.
say yes, we're not going to look at you. You may not know that because you didn't read it, but whatever. We don't need to go through that. Boom, you're out. And there are a few other things that would just make our lives a lot easier when we do when we do the first review, to eliminate folks like that. And then there's some other questions we could go through. So again, I don't know whether that is something that we could do without this new tool, but you said some things that made me think maybe this new tool would be helpful. So that's one.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great point. And you're absolutely right, though. I think we could accomplish it with this by asking that question on its own page and then hiding it. But I think something like that, Laura, is honestly almost more better handled through like an intent to apply that we might use this year, where we say, tell us right off the bat, are you an undergrad? And if you say yes, you can't move forward. And then you've saved everybody time, because then they're not filling in an application. You're not choosing not to review an application. So yeah, it might be a better way. But again, I think for that, maybe it's best if we, chatted about that, because that might not use this tool.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. And the other thing is, I mean, so it's always good to listen to these things that you give, Jessica, because even if it's not exactly right, there's always something to learn. But the other one you mentioned that is very specific to us is the issue about pairing images with narrative. And that was something that would be very helpful with this, because there are multiple images, et cetera. But you did say that we might lose some image quality in doing that. And I just wanted to
understand that.
A word about that. Yeah.
For sure. For sure. Let me see if I've got a good example of what a page might look like for that. So instead of the way that y'all do it right now, right, you use the media library, which you should, because that really allows for just a much higher res image to be uploaded and then viewed by your panelists. But then I think you're exactly the case. You're right, that I was talking about, where you also really do want them to provide some coordinating narratives to each of those 5 pieces, right? And so right now we're saying on this page, give us your 5 pieces of artwork. And then on the next page, tell us this important information. This would allow you to create one single set like this, where we're saying, tell us your title of your artwork, give us the description, tell us when you made it. And these might not be your exact questions, but assume they could be your exact narrative questions that you're asking. And then rather than using that media library select page, my suggestion is that we include the upload file button right here, where they can just include an image or even 2, because again, I know there was that question for you guys, should we allow for a second view? So this would really let you, per artwork, be able to sort of keep it all as a tidy set. Right. But with these upload file fields, if you recall, they do allow for JPEGs and even PNGs, but the limit is 1,000 by 1,000 pixels. And many artists might feel like that is not allowing you to get into the details that they'd like you to see. If you also agree, we could actually still even do it the way that you're doing it, where we do continue to use the media library selection page and say, upload your 5 pieces of artwork here. And then on that second page, still just create the set once, but say, fill this out for each item that you attached on the page before, and tell us, the title and the description and the other good stuff that you're asking for. And that way we still can alleviate you having to create 5 sets of these. But you're also a good example of saying, you guys definitely mandate 5 exact, right? It's not sort of like up to 5. So you would
we may change that.
And you may change it, sure.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
So still could be valuable.
We can, we do need to schedule a time to meet, because we're in the middle of, doing our clone piece. But I think this has some real promise, and we can go over the details that apply to us in particular.
For sure.
Would be great.
Yeah, I agree. Great. Terrific. Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us. And as always, please reach out if you have any questions about the tool. I'm so excited about it. I'd much rather that you give it a try, that we can go through your cycles together even, and sort of really comb through and see where it might make sense. If you're feeling like, yeah, it seems like this would work, but I'm just not sure where, would definitely love to work with you on it. So reach out, as always, help@gosmart.org. And let us know if you have any questions. And if you're using it, let us know how it's working for you. We'd love to hear that as well.
Great.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.